In this video, we are going to talk about top 10 horror movies. So before starting this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel for the future updates. The best horror movies of all time aren't just full of jump scares and things that go bump in the night. While these are recurring themes, the best scary movies are the ones that make you scream while you're watching them, but also the ones that haunt your nightmares long after the credits have finished. The best horror films are like onions and ogres, they have layers. After all, jump scares and monstrous imagery seem cheap if they aren't presented in the right way, and that's quite often what non-horror fans don't quite understand about the genre. We aren't all here for guts and gore. We need the emotional and psychological elements as much as everything else. Here's a list of the top 10 horror movies. Let's start. Number 10. Blood Quantum. Strange events are taking place on the Red Crow Indian Reservation. Gutted fish is floating about. Dogs that have been put down continue to bark, and the town drunk who is vomiting blood seems to be ravenous for human flesh. 6 months later, the Micmac tribal people of the area are in the midst of a full-fledged zombie apocalypse. From a conflicted sheriff hero, Michael Greyeyes, giving off major leading man vibes, to a safe zone under heavy siege, writer-director Jeff Barnaby borrows a lot of elements from previous Walking Dead escapades. The fact that the survivors are mostly First Nations people and the chomping, clawing ghouls are mostly white people should not be overlooked. It's a satisfying, indigenous take on a classic genre that's not short on gore. There's a sequence involving a nurse and a chainsaw that couldn't be more gory, or anti-colonialist, eco-conscious commentary. Number 9. Sinister. Before helming Doctor Strange, director Scott Derrickson's experience with the supernatural skewed in favor of the spooky stuff, and the crowning achievement of his horror filmography is without a doubt Sinister. The story centers on a true crime writer played by Ethan Hawke, who moves his family into a home that once played host to a series of grisly murders. His hope is that this mysterious crime can serve as the basis of his next book. The film is not afraid to embrace haunted house clichés, but Derrickson's mastery over them is such that even when you can see a scare coming, it never fails to hit the mark. Employing elements of found footage to excellent effect, Sinister will make you steer clear of the attic. Number 8. His House. After fleeing South Sudan's civil war and unspeakable disaster, a couple named Bol Sope Diarsu and Rial Wunmi Mosaku find themselves in London, where they begin a new life. However, the state-approved apartment they've been allocated is more than a little run down. It's also haunted, but the question quickly emerges as to whether the malevolent spirits who also call this dilapidated flat home are locals, or if they're the direct product of something significant in the duo's past. The film debut of writer-director Remy Weeks is more than just a timely take on the haunted house story. It's a deft, devastating portrayal of both the physical hazards and the dehumanization mechanism inherent in modern refugee experience as filtered via a genre prism, in which the spookier, more surreal elements don't cancel out the social commentary, or vice versa. Number 7. Paranormal Activity told using video camera footage. This supernatural horror combined everything that made the Blair Witch Project and the Amityville horror classics of the genre. The specter doing the haunting is a demon that feeds off of negative energy and has latched itself onto Katie. In Paranormal Activity we get to see the psychological damage that prolonged exposure to pure evil wreaks on an ordinary couple. The found footage style makes it feel believable while also incorporating numerous jump scares. But it's the moments of quiet and static that allow the sudden action to scare us to our bones. Number 6. The Witch. For anyone who feels tired of the same old horror movie tropes, The Witch is a welcome change. The feature film debut of writer-director Robert Eggers. This period piece is a reminder that there are a lot of different ways to scare an audience. Set in the 17th century, The Witch follows a Puritan family trying to scrape out a living on their New England farm when the youngest child, Samuel, suddenly disappears near the woods. However, the fervently religious family is torn apart by suspicion. Bad luck and it would seem supernatural influence. You'll find few jump scares in The Witch. The film takes a slow burn approach that instead gets under your skin using atmosphere, paranoia and an unrelenting sense of dread. Number 5. The Invisible Man. In the form of a #MeToo parable, H.G. Wells' classic Man Who Wasn't There tale gets a modern update. Cecilia Cass, Elizabeth Moss, giving one of her best performances to date, is trapped in an abusive relationship with a cutting-edge tech giant, Oliver Jackson Cohen. She goes into hiding, he is discovered dead, and everything seems to be heading in the right direction. Except Cecilia has a peculiar feeling that her ex is still tormenting her in some way, which may be related to what he'd been working on in his laboratory. As well as all of those things mysteriously moving on their own. Director Leigh Whannell's chilling, brilliantly calculated nightmare transforms an old Universal horror film into something much scarier than monsters out of control. A gaslighting story in which no one believes you're suffering because they can't see what's causing it. Number 4. The Silence of the Lambs. This movie is one of only a handful of horror films to ever make a serious impact at the Academy Awards. Its handling of themes such as gender identity have made it the subject of much retrospective criticism. But it's not Buffalo Bill's motivations that make this film so terrifying. At its heart, The Silence of the Lambs is a story about the abduction and murder of female victims. Crimes that feel all too real and terrifying. Jodie Foster's performance as FBI trainee Clarice Starling was career-defining. And who can ever forget the way Anthony Hopkins inhabited the role of Dr. Hannibal Lecter? He manages to make the former psychologist and cannibal charming, magnetic, manipulative and ultimately one of the scariest characters in cinema. Number 3. The Vast of Night. Imagine a Steven Spielberg-style science fiction throwback set in 1950s small-town America, complete with bright young techno-savvy nerds, Jake Horowitz and Sierra McCormick, unexplained transmissions, and a dash of Roswell paranoia. Reduce the big-budget frills while significantly increasing the level of creativity. Without looking like a third-generation clone of film brat nostalgia, director Andrew Patterson's brilliant debut knows just how to work its retro Twilight Zone mojo, down to injecting a black-and-white TV anthology program from an alternative universe into the narrative cracks. But it's also using its creator's astonishing virtuosity with sci-fi, horror cinema's language to do more than just show off its influences or show off in general. Number 2. La Llorona. A war crimes tribunal summons an aging Guatemalan general, Julio Diaz, to account for decades of persecuting, imprisoning, and torturing political opponents. His wife, Margarita Kennefiche, who may or may not lead a coven that has helped him stay in control, declares, "The past is in the past. And that the past is still with us, and the ghosts are as well," an idea that filmmaker Jairo Bustamante beautifully uses for slow-burning fear and a feeling of chickens finally coming home to roost. And you're completely right if you think the sudden arrival of a young Mayan woman, Mara Mercedes Coroy, pretending to be the family's new maid indicates some kind of repressed revenge. It's the kind of enigmatic and inventive story that gets under your skin rather than shocking your central nervous system, which just adds to the near-suffocating sense of foreboding. Number 1. The Thing. Just 4 years after Halloween, John Carpenter made another classic, though no one knew it at the time. The Thing was poorly received upon its release and barely broke even. Over the years, however, it's been subject to one of the most drastic critical re-evaluations in the history of horror. The practical effects used to bring the titular monster to life stand up to this day and still represent some of the most grotesque but inspired creature designs to ever grace the screen. The gross bodily manipulation was simply too much for viewers back in the 1980s. But this uniquely terrifying vision would go on to influence a generation of horror filmmakers. What do you think of our list? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoy this video and want to hear from me again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go. Thanks for watching.